Are British Muslims safe in the UK? Recently, there have been repeated attacks against Muslims, including outside a mosque in London's Finsbury Park. There was also a horrific attack on two Muslims here in East London. Jamil Mukhtar and his cousin Resham Khan suffered the unprovoked acid attack, leaving both victims with life-changing injuries. Mukhtar and Khan were attacked in a car at traffic lights in East London on the morning of the 21st of June while out celebrating Khan's 21st birthday. Both suffered severe burns to the face and body, and Mukhtar was initially placed in an induced coma. The Metropolitan Police named the suspected attacker as John Tomlin, aged 24, but initially ruled out a religious or racial motive for the crime. However, they later admitted it was being investigated as a hate crime. Many members of the public feel that British Muslims are treated differently from non-Muslims, and they cite the murders of MP Joe Cox and the soldier Lee Rigby. Mukhtar himself has said if the roles had been reversed and an Asian man had attacked an English couple with acid, the whole country knows it would be classed as a terror attack. Yet most mainstream media have either failed to cover it or treated it as a minor story, and the public hardly heard of the incident. Why does Britain seem so socially and racially divided? And is Britain safe for Muslims? Simple questions with important answers. A terrorist drove his van into 10 Muslims as they left that mosque in Finsbury Park, and other hate crimes against Muslims have surged in the UK. Why are such attacks against Muslims happening at the moment? We asked the public here in London.
I think it's probably based on the fact that the majority of terrorist attacks that have happened in London have been perpetrated by Muslims. And it's seen as a cultural phenomenon. And it's almost revenge, sadly.
I think it is more about ignorance. People don't understand religion, and I think it's difficult for them to actually distinguish between real Muslims and people who are purporting to be Muslims pursuing their own agendas within using religion as a clout to do that. I think that's more about ignorance rather than anything else.
It's a lot. I think there's been a lot of fears, especially with the Brexit and things like that happening in the world, and obviously with the whole thing happening with Donald Trump. There's a lot of people angry. Obviously, anyone needs to take blame, and they just blame immigrants or blame Muslims because they're the easiest targets to blame because of what we see around the world and the stories that we hear.
I'm sure it's a reaction to the things that have been happening at Westminster and London Bridge and so on, I'm sure. I think there's a tendency for people to lash out, and I think that's what it is.
Possibly a reaction against how people perceive there to be a Muslim threat in this country, whether true or false, but yeah.
And I feel like some sentiments might have boiled over, but also there's a lot of misunderstanding about Muslim communities in general and a lot of ignorance.
I think the media portrayal is a bit to blame in that, because the way they write the news, it comes out so shocking that it will be inevitable for any person not to be in shock. So I think the way the public is now looking at the Muslim is very negative, but media portrayal is responsible for that.
It's just the narrative that is being carried by media and politicians. I mean, we're not saying that radicalization is not an issue. It is an issue. Terrorism is an issue. But the way that it has been used, to play into a narrative of ostracization and trying to exclude people on account of their faith or their ethnicity is driving people to basically act out and becoming more xenophobic and ethnocentric. So I would say that, the responsibility bears on the shoulders of the government.
These attacks are happening at the moment for two reasons. One, due to recent incidents that have happened, particularly the London Bridge incident, the Manchester incident, people are holding the wider Muslim community responsible for it. They are holding people of a certain race responsible, people of a certain religion responsible for it, which quite frankly is discriminatory. It's unfair, it's unreasonable. And the Finsbury Park incident is a good demonstration of what the view should be. In the Finsbury Park incident, Muslims were the victim of a terrorist attack. But you did not hear on any commentary, on any TV, radio, media, print, internet, Muslims saying all white people are responsible, or Muslims saying all Christians are responsible, or Muslims saying one race, religion, or one nationality are responsible. What you heard the Muslims saying was that this person is responsible, this person needs to be held accountable, and not a whole race or a whole religion. And that, I would say, is the correct narrative, the correct approach. How can you hold a whole religion or a whole race of people responsible for the acts of one madman, of one loony who's gone off the rails? How could you do that? The other reason is this. Part of the reason why people hold the Muslim responsible is you have a narrative running through the media, the government response to things, but more importantly, the current right-wing position. What you find now is, in the current elections that have happened, the far right have been destroyed politically. The UKIP hardly secured any votes. BNP nowhere to be seen. And if you look at this historically, what you find is whenever the right wing lose ground politically, they then resort to violence. And this has happened in the past, and this is what we're seeing now. It's a manifestation of the far right using violence on the ground as opposed to political campaign.
The author J.K. Rowling attributed some blame for the Finsbury Park terrorist attack on media outlets such as the Daily Mail because they continually demonise the Muslim community. What does the public think?
I haven't noticed that the media has been sort of trying to get people into these retaliation attacks. It's not something that I've perceived to be happening here, no.
Yeah, I think the media plays a role as well, because if you look at the Finsbury attack, what happens is, I think they try to make it like an isolated loner doing it, but if it is got to do with Muslim perpetrating the same attack, they will just say, you know what, Islamic terrorism. I think the media plays a role, and what the media should understand as well, the world we live in now, people actually consume whatever they see on the media and whatever they read, so they should take some responsibility of it as well.
This is the thing, and I see it in different parts of media where it has one side of the story, and yeah, there's a lot of newspapers and I suppose shows and people having speeches about hate against Muslims. Equally, there's arguments for supporting Muslims, but I do agree. I think media has a big part in this. The reason, the hatred against Muslims in general, I suppose.
Yes. Particularly the Daily Mail. I mean, I've never liked the Daily Mail, and I've always been, and the Express and papers like that. Yeah, absolutely. You get some ridiculous headlines and not based on fact.
Yeah, I would say that's a large factor of the reprisal that they felt is newspapers telling people how to think and what to do.
Obviously it has. Yeah, it has. The media has. But again, it is up to society to decide on what they want to do. But the media has. I mean, it has affected me as well. Not that I discriminate amongst Muslims, but sometimes I'm skeptical to go in communities where they may be.
Oh, I actually agree with her. Look, the problem that we have today is that the media is trying to basically play into people's, negative feelings, because it's easier, to play into xenophobia and racism than to actually try to, to portray the truth and actually tell reality. Because they want to sell newspapers, so they're basically trying to, to downplay into bad sentiments, and it's working. They're making money out of it, but they don't really care, whether it's moral, whether it's ethic, and what they're actually doing to society. And what they're doing is exactly what happened in the 1930s. We wonder how it happened. It's exactly how.
I totally agree with J.K. Rowling's position. If you have a situation where a Muslim or a brown person or a black person steals a can of baked beans from a supermarket, the way it's reported, for some reason, it's deemed necessary to report that person's race, religion, nationality. Whereas if a white person does the same act or a worse act, you don't hear the race, religion, nationality mentioned at all. And so that is a prime example of biased media reporting, Islamophobic media reporting, xenophobic media reporting. And this is part of the problem. because it feeds a narrative, it poisons people's minds. People then start believing that people of colour or people of a certain religion are an evil, are a danger, and then that then feeds into further discriminatory behaviour and conduct, which people of colour and people of a certain religion then suffer, which in this case are people of the Muslim faith.
Over the last 4 years, we've had elections, a housing crisis, Brexit, a rise in terrorism, and an increase in hate crime. Why is Britain so divided at the moment? Here's what the public said.
I feel it's there's something about the way that London is set up that has lots of divides along the wealth lines and along socio-political lines, and it sort of creates an us against them attitude for people that feel like their lives aren't good enough and there's somebody to hate.
It's just, I mean, especially I'll say this again, Brexit having 42 to the 58, it's 48 to 52, and it's so everyone's unsure of their neighbours. I have friends that don't even know if they're welcome in this country, and it's because we're so divided in our beliefs in politics and our beliefs in the rules and the laws, and it's just a matter of we don't know who to trust when you walk out the door. So you just naturally divide and go to the people that you feel comfortable around, which tends to be people in the same situation as yourself.
I suppose the financial crisis that we've had over the last few years has hit a lot of people, and there's always a tendency to look out for somebody to blame, and I think that is very divisive.
Basically, people are exploiting people's fears about jobs and housing and debt, and using the age-old excuse to blame the foreigner, blame the immigrant, and again they're creating a situation where there isn't a real one.
There are ghosts of a history of class divide, I think, that are kind of coming to the surface, and Brexit is an interesting issue because it tears apart all strata of society along different orthogonal sort of classifications.
I don't know. I think it's to do with austerity. People are so stressed. The mental well-being of people is not that great. People don't have jobs, and the moment people don't have jobs, that calls for what do I call it? When people are not in employment, it creates a lot of tension in that people get divided, people get excluded in society. So I think austerity is to blame about that.
I would say cognitive dissonance. First of all, we divorced from reality. So what politicians are saying and the agenda they're carrying is not in tune with what the people need or what the people want. They're not listening to the people they're supposed to represent, and it's leading to those issues. It's just the manifestation of a lack of communication, a lack of understanding, and a divorce from reality on the part of the government and the establishment.
The reason why Britain is so divided at the moment is because we have two narratives running at the moment. The last elections show that the whole of Britain was divided, almost split into two. One part of Britain is following the Tory or Theresa May narrative. The other side of Britain is following the Jeremy Corbyn narrative. And what is the difference between these two narratives? One narrative is all about the upper 10%, is all about aggressive foreign policy, it's all about strong austerity measures. And the Jeremy Corbyn narrative is the complete opposite. Jeremy Corbyn narrative is anti-austerity, it's anti-war, it's accepting that there might be issues within our own decision making as a government that need to be addressed. So we have two narratives running strong, the whole country is split between these two narratives, it buys into a divided Britain.
On 7th of June, days after the attack in London Bridge, the Guardian newspaper reported London police figures for the city showing hate crime against Muslims rose from an average of 38 a day to 54 a day. They recorded other crime where anti-Muslim motive was identified as it rose from an average of 4 to 20. After the Manchester attack on May the 22nd, the Tell Mama organisation, which records anti-Muslim incidents, recorded 141 of these, a rise of 500% compared with a daily average of 25 before that attack. Does the public think the press coverage of the Muslim community in Britain is fair?
I think it's quite biased. I think we tend to focus more on the negatives, so for example extremism, and not really focus on the benefits that the culture and Muslims in general offer our society, which I think is a shame. But I do think the media have been perpetuating quite a negative impression of Muslims in this country.
No, I feel like Muslims do get a bad rep, but they also, every time that something bad happens to them or these terrorist attacks happen, you see a groundswell of support for the Muslim community as well. So it's not unfair, I feel.
From certain sections of the media, it is not fair, but if it comes to the theoretical aspect of it, that is what has been written in books and what the government is purporting to do, I think it's fair, but the actions, I think that's where the problem is. I think politicians should do more. It's not about getting, I think the whole tension is getting immigrants in is one thing, helping them integrate and educating the people they're meeting as well. I think that plays a big role.
The wonderful thing is when we had anything that happens in this country that goes bad, we do get people from different faiths, Muslim especially, trying to stand up against the prejudice that's against them and trying to show that it's not just a matter of religion or race. I feel bad for the people that have been really targeted, Muslims targeting, just in general, to be honest, yeah.
I think it tries to be balanced, obviously restricted by the law as to how they can veil their attacks. But generally there's a lot of positive coverage, there's a lot of positive reporting in the news, but people still see the big news stories as being a general indication of what all Muslims are in this country, which I don't think is the truth.
Because of what happens that we all know, terrorist attacks are happening. Of course, the media will cover what it has seen, and then society, the way society will respond. Because, for example, if you have a child who's like 3, 4, and they go to nursery, and these are all over television, these are all over everywhere, and then they have Muslim cohorts, I think they call them students at that level, that they study with. Definitely, they are going to be terrified to associate or identify with them because of what they watch on telly, what they read on newspapers, and things like that.
No, and only because I don't think the media actually care about, again, representing the truth. What they care about is, just getting their title out, or their press coverage. They don't really care about the truth, and they don't care about talking about the pluralism within Islam and to talk about the many different schools of thoughts within Islam and the differences, how they move with each other, the history behind it, the culture, the traditions. And so, of course, what they're doing is a caricature of Islam and Muslims, and it's easier for them to manipulate and play out.
I do not believe that the press coverage of the Muslim community in this country is fair, as we consistently see biased reporting, we consistently see Islamophobic reporting. And the situation you have is people then start to see one community as the other. You start to blame all of the problems that this country is going through on migrants or refugees or Muslims or people of colour. And I think it really does need to be addressed. I think there needs to be tighter regulation on the media. Yes, there is free speech. Yes, the media should be able to report, but they should report accurately and fairly, not in a discriminatory way, not in a way that could cause harm, not just to people's reputations. We see that all the time. Celebrities sue for reputation. But what about people's lives, people's well-being? This is what the cost is of biased or racist or Islamophobic media reporting.
A man walked up to 2 Muslims sitting in a car and threw acid in their faces. He's still on the run. Is Britain safe for Muslims?
Unfortunately, I feel like, there's evidence showing that there is an increase in hate crime in this country. A lot of my friends are Muslim, and they don't feel safe walking down the street. So unfortunately, I do feel Muslims in general probably do feel quite unsafe.
Yeah, I do think it's safe. I think there's always going to be idiots and there's always going to be extremists, but by and large, I think it's okay. I think just sort of communications between all parties could probably be better, and having incidents like the Grenfell Tower around the road, and you sort of brings communities together, which unfortunately they're not the kind of things you want to happen. But I think we're all humans, so just got to get along.
I think it's still safe. All we need to do is to understand each other and understand religious and cultural differences. I think Britain is still safe compared to other countries. Yes.
I don't know. I don't actually know if this country really. I mean, I wouldn't feel that safe. Not just for Muslims, but just people that, in general, immigrants coming into the country. I wouldn't feel safe as one of them because, again, I don't know. I don't feel like they feel that they're accepted. So, and it's unsure what the future is for them, really. So, no, I wouldn't feel it's safe for them.
Well, I can't speak for Muslims really because I'm not a Muslim. Around here, I think it is, yeah. But I can't speak for other areas. I mean, this area around Borough is actually wonderfully peaceful. We have a mosque around the corner. Days when it's open, we have tea, and it's great. And people are just very friendly around here. What it's like anywhere else, I don't know. And to be a Muslim in another city.
Well, not being Muslim, it's hard for me to say. But I don't think it's the most welcoming place. But I think we're doing okay compared to other European nations where the problems are even worse.
Yes, it is.
Why do you think that?
There is law, there is legislation. Not everyone has hate Muslims. Of course, affected families have a negative expression when it comes to Muslims. And this is not a battle for only Muslims. This is a battle for everyone. It's a battle for the BME community. It's a battle for the unemployed. If you see the way media portrays people on benefits, that's another story. If you see the way it portrays black people with mental illness, that's another story. Or BME with... it's not about the UK, it's about society. So it's a battle for everyone. It's a battle for all of us to ensure that we come back together.
Yes and no, it depends when and where. But I'm going to say, generally speaking, a lot of women don't feel safe at all because they wear the hijab, and so they worry that, when you're in the tube or the bus or whatever, you're walking out. People are just worried. It's scary thinking that a random person to walk up to you and attack you for no good reason, and the government doesn't seem to really care or even address the issue. And to be fair, I don't think we know either as Muslims how to address this issue. Do we need to change? Do we need to find a way to communicate better with each other and explain to people that it's just a manifestation of our faith and it's not dangerous. It's not a statement of anything. It's just us. It's difficult. How do you address this? I don't have the answer. All I know is that it's worrying. It's a bit scary, and I don't know what's going to happen.
I do think it is safe for Muslims in this country at the moment, but I do also see that there are dangers. But what I would ask all of our Muslims to be wary of is falling into a trap of there being a frenzy, a concern which just gets to them. We need to be sensible about this. Yes, we should be cautious. Attacks are happening, but equally, those attacks will also happen on people of colour. How do people distinguish between a Muslim and non-Muslim? Unfortunately, in this country, people assume that someone wearing a turban or someone of a certain colour of skin is automatically a Muslim. So it doesn't just affect Muslims, it affects everybody. And I think the sooner people come to realise that it affects everybody, that something can be done about it. And yes, we should be cautious. Attacks are happening. It would be silly to not acknowledge that, especially in the Muslim community where women are easily identifiable because of the hijab. They are particularly vulnerable, and we need to take precautions for that. We need to be aware of that and do what we can. But at the same time, we should not live in fear. We should step up and make it known that we will not be feared and we will not be bullied by racists and xenophobes.
British Muslims note a reluctance to report attacks against Muslims as terrorism, while attacks by white men are reported as anything but terror. They say this is a case of double standards. Many feel the police are treating crimes against Muslims a lot less seriously than those against non-Muslims. Following the attack at that mosque in Finsbury Park and the other with acid in East London, some are asking if British Muslims are safe in the UK. They suggest that if this persecution is not being adequately covered in the British mainstream media, then there's little reason to think that Muslims in Britain will be safer now or in the immediate future.